I have created a brand new MLB franchise in Hawaii, and this video will not end until we win the Hawaii Sharks a World Series. Tired of living in the Dodgers' shadow, the Los Angeles Angels have decided to start from scratch, relocating to Honolulu, and my job is to turn them into a champion. However, this won't be easy because we're starting with an expansion level roster, which also includes active players born in Hawaii such as Kirby Yates and Isaiah Kainer-Falefa. Then to add on to our struggles, due to high travel costs for the team and time zone differences that will decrease TV viewership, we have one of the worst budgets in the league, so most of our rebuild will be through the draft with a twist. Our one restriction is that any player in the draft from Hawaii must be selected before any other prospect, which likely means we don't get to choose our first or second round pick. The scary part about that is I don't know how many draft prospects are from Hawaii, so there's a good chance I'm screwing myself over, but we start out strong on opening day. That is a first inning dinger from Cade Marlowe, and is definitely not how I thought this would start out. The only reason I jumped in was to show how bad we truly are, but it turns out the White Sox might be one of the only teams we can actually beat. However, it's still 1-0 as we left two guys on base, but there's a nice play, so the Sharks have a prime chance to extend their lead, and there is no way that's another home run. Before you guys ask me, my settings are the same as always, and the White Sox are simply this bad as that's another 2-run bomb. I am shocked right now because the Sharks might have the talent to win 30 games max, but we can't celebrate just yet as the White Sox have come surging back. Entering the 6th inning, it is only a 1-run game, but unfortunately for us, Chicago has all the momentum. However, our bullpen came in and didn't allow another run, and now we're bringing in our best player, the veteran Kirby Yates. Born in Hawaii, he's our closer at 37 years old, and I'm curious if he's still got it. Regression hits hard in MLB The Show, but so far so good, as he is 1 out away from the victory, and there's the swing and miss on the slider. Hawaii has won their first game in franchise history. That was certainly not expected in the best way, as our team hit 4 home runs, which was enough to lead us to victory. That is a great start, but don't raise your expectations because this graph says everything you need to know about this team. Maybe we can get off to a fast start though, as I'm simulating the second game we lose, so the series comes down to this and we lost. We would then go on to lose 7 games in a row, so not in good shape. And now we're checking out this draft class where we have the number 2 pick, but it might not matter if we're forced to select a Hawaiian player. But so far, I am not seeing any, so I think we're in the clear as we reach the end of the class without finding a single Hawaiian player, and I'm not sure how many the game generates. Let me know down in the comments if you've ever found one. That being said, we have no restrictions for this first draft, which means I can go after whoever I want, including the number 1 player in the class who looks really good. He is the first player we're looking at, and then alongside that, we're scouting and discovering international pitchers. Starting pitching will be our number 1 need in pretty much every draft moving forward, but with our final 2 needs, I'm marking catcher and center field as they are very important. I also just realized I forgot to add another Hawaiian player, Joey Cantillo, to the roster, and that is a great find because he's going to be our new best pitcher. We desperately need to add to our farm system though, because right now we don't have a single player above D potential, which is just awful, but at least in our first week of scouting, we found a guaranteed slam dunk player in Bradford Woodward. If we draft him, his contact would immediately be the best on the team, but he's also sneaky athletic and has really good vision and discipline. I would be very comfortable making him the first selection of the rebuild, but of course I want to keep looking around, as shortstop would be a more valuable position and Francisco Vasquez looks very good. I know shortstop isn't the biggest need on the team as we have Isaiah Kainer-Falefa, but so far I am shocked looking at the stats as he has a 237 OPS. That is alarmingly bad, but unfortunately it doesn't get much better after that, as pretty much everybody on our team is on a cold streak except for Matt Rudick, who if you remember hit 2 home runs on opening day, and currently he has an 1100 OPS. Those numbers are not sustainable, but at the very least I'm glad someone's playing well. And now against the Rangers, we're trying to break our losing streak and win our second game of the year. We have taken the lead in the 10th inning, but unfortunately Kirby Yates cannot close it out, so we're still tied in the 11th and Matt Rudick nearly scored. That was great contact right to second as Yates holds it down, but it might not matter if we can't score a run here and Marlowe grounds out. We are so close to win number 2 as the game's still going, but unfortunately our offense looks completely lost. We have not gotten on base in several innings as Rudick gets unlucky again, so now the Rangers have another chance to walk it off, and you've got to be kidding me. We are now in the 15th inning, and this could finally be our chance to get a runner on the board as Marlowe hits it more than deep enough for a sac fly. That was a painful wait, but finally we get on the board, and Isaiah Kainer-Falefa Falefa will give us another run to hopefully get his season back on track. Now it's up to our bullpen to close it out, and you have got to be kidding me. A 2-run shot immediately. That is painful, so at this point, I'm simulating to the end of the game where Texas walks it off, and this roller coaster of a game ends in a very unfortunate way. I think that's our sign to continue focusing on the draft as we find the #1 player in Ozzie Meza, and I don't normally like taking pitchers in the first round just because you can get them so much later, but as a lefty with good walks per 9, Mesa might be an option if this class is not very deep. We continue scouting and discovering pitchers by region, along with looking at position guys one at a time, and this week we're looking at a developmental catcher named Gaylord Phipps. We sim another month and are definitely not missing anything as we are 7-37, and after a ridiculous start, Matt Rudick has fallen off the face of the earth with a 675 OPS. Sadly, that is the 3rd best on our team, so there's not really much to say about the offense this year, but I would also be very surprised if any of our starting pitchers, with the exception of maybe Joey Cantillo, are back next year. Our best player this year is very likely Kirby Yates, who's putting up pretty good numbers, but of course he is 37 years old and it is really showing. As far as our Hawaiian players go, he has been fine, while Joey Cantillo has been pretty underwhelming, but the biggest disappointment this year has been Isaiah Kainer Falefa, who the Sharks were relying on to be their best offensive player, but instead he's having the worst season of his career. At least on the bright side, I found another draftable position player, Dave Marcello, a first baseman who looks to have pretty good power. Our second selection is at number 43, so hopefully he's there, but it seems our scouts are not done cooking as we discovered the brand new #1 player in the class, Jordy Wagner. So far, this is looking like a solid draft as we discover 4 new infielders, and on top of that, we might be getting Head. We definitely need late round options, and even though Charlie Head is 22 years old, he is coming in with guaranteed high potential and could be a good 5th round option. My favorite option in the first round is Bradford Woodward, who is a right fielder and is the highest rated position guy on the board, but if I don't get him, I would be more than happy taking Ozzie Mesa, who more than likely would immediately become our ace, so we really can't go wrong with either option. Then for our second selection, it starts to get a little bit more interesting as first baseman Dave Marcello is the player I'm targeting, and if he's available, he is a slam dunk pick as our likely first baseman of the future with great potential and power. However, in the event he is not available, I would go with my 3rd round target, Jordy Wagner, and he would be an amazing value as the #1 player on my board, but of course, I don't like taking pitchers early. The reason for this is there are not a lot of good position players in the draft, so I value them a lot higher, and there are some other project players later in the class like Charlie Head, Sandy Best, and Vinny Freeland. Now all we can do is start the draft and hope Washington doesn't take my guy, they select the backup. That means the first pick of the Hawaii Sharks franchise will officially be Bradford Woodward, and I could not be more excited. Let's do this. We have taken the draft's best position player, and with our second pick, we are selecting hopefully another good one in Dave Marcello. I am rolling the dice, simulating forward, hoping that nobody takes him, and sure enough, he is still there. Not wasting any time, I'm making him our next selection, as our first draft starts off with 2 future starters, so this draft is already great, but I think it would be even better if we could select Jordy Wagner, who's the #1 player in the class. However, there are over 30 selections to go until our next pick, and it feels like good discovery pitchers are going earlier than ever, so I am not too optimistic. Jordy would be an amazing get, simming forward, and he is still on the board. There's no way. What a start to our first draft class. I am telling you guys, do not draft pitchers high. It's a huge waste of time. My next favorite target is William Turnwall, but unfortunately, he is selected in the 3rd round. However, that is perfectly fine, as we're set up to make this draft even better, getting Charlie Head. I seriously was not expecting Jordy Wagner to be there, but it works out in our favor, as we are starting out the draft on a good note, but my next favorite player goes in round number 4. With 2 selections to go, I am taking the number 7 player on our board, Cristobal Escalona. So we have now drafted 2 very good starting pitchers, and with our final pick, I could take a 3rd, but Steven Ross is only 25% scouted. That wouldn't be a bad risk, but I actually have a better idea. Closing pitcher Geronimo Salas is still available, and he will end off a very strong first draft. At the All-Star break, we are only 40 games back in the AL West, and to my surprise, our team is actually slowly getting better, as we had just 1 win in the first month of the season. Our best offensive player has been Austin Shenton, who is rightfully our token All-Star representative, leading our team in hits, home runs, and RBIs. However, right behind him are players like Matt Gorsick and Matt Rudick, who might have played well enough to earn a spot on the roster next year. Our pitching also hasn't been that bad, as I was expecting far uglier numbers, but instead we have 3 guys with an ERA below 4. That's all very interesting to me, but not exciting exciting enough for me to play any more games this season as we are simulating to the end. But of course, we have to make a stop at early August to check out our brand new draft picks. I am very optimistic after landing 3 top 10 talents as we enter, and that is a great start to the franchise. Bradford Woodward right away is a 70 overall with 92 potential and very good contact, and it should not take very long for him to get up to the show. Getting the #1 position player in the class is a great start, but then we followed up with Dave Marcello, who is 21 years old, coming in with 93 potential and 60 overall. He has been on my radar since near the beginning of the year, and while his draft rank was a little bit lower in the 50s, I feel like that was only because he's 21 years old. Getting another position player with this power profile is extremely exciting, but maybe the best value pick in the entire class was getting Jordy Wagner, who was ranked as the #1 player in the class, and he certainly backs that up. The 19-year-old immediately comes in with A potential and 65 overall, along with a pretty solid walks and hits per 9 to start out. Then we went back to the position side, taking another player I'm interested in Charlie Head. He is a great project player, but the downside is he is 22 years old, so it's unclear if he'll ever become anything, but at least he comes in with good potential and contact that should help him develop. Coming into this draft, I wanted to take 2 pitchers, and I'm extremely pleased with the ones we got, as Cristobal Escalona is 72 overall right out the gate. The value in the 5th round is absolutely absurd, and he is even more pro-ready than Jordy Wagner, so the future of our rotation is in great hands. Then to close things out, we could have taken a 3rd arm, but I found an absolute gem of a player in closing pitcher Geronimo Salas. He is another discovery guy, and despite being the last pick of the draft, he has the highest overall out of any player we took, so I would say we did pretty well in this first draft. I am excited for this team's future as we really need all the help we can get, finishing 35 and 137. After a historically bad season, we might keep a few players from the original roster, but for the most part, it's probably in our best interest to gut this thing and start from scratch. It seems that all of the positives in the first half of the year all went away in the second, as nobody finished with an ERA under 4, but one of the only guys I want to bring back is 76 overall Hawaii native Isaiah Kainer-Falefa, who definitely didn't have a good year, but he's still 76 overall. Unfortunately though, he is hitting free agency and simply wants way too much money for the season he just had, so we really have no choice but to cut him loose. This roster has been decimated from about 90 players down to 39, but on the bright side, our draft picks are here, which sort of makes up for the loss. Season 2 is all about bringing in new players to compete while we're waiting for our draft picks to come up, and guys like Alec Burleson and Jonah Bride are perfect examples. Thankfully, we signed all 3 players on our board, but now it's time for the most important part of the offseason, the draft lottery. Everyone in the league knows we deserve the #1 pick, but the question is, will we get it, as we are tied for the highest odds with 3 other teams. This lottery has screwed me over more times than I can count, and I always feel a bit of adrenaline when I'm simming it. We dropped to #2, not bad. That means we're picking in the same spot as last year, and now in the Rule 5 draft, we are starting off with the selection of Seth Brown, followed by a veteran catcher, Reese McGuire, who I'm going to be calling Reese Magooner. If you don't understand that reference, do yourself a favor and Google Reese McGuire Dollar Tree parking lot. It is absolutely hilarious. This year, I only selected 4 players in the Rule 5 draft, which is certainly a low, but it's worth noting that one of those players, Josh Winder, will be moved to starting pitcher as he has 72 stamina. Just to show you how much of a steal this is, when moved over to starter, he is a 73 overall, so that is a really good value in the Rule 5 draft. Here is our roster entering Season 2 as we keep Joey Cantillo another season, while also adding 2 offensive players in free agency that I definitely have high expectations for. Also, even though several of our rookies project as the best players on the team, I do want to keep them down in the minors, at least to start out, but do not be surprised if we see a few debuts as early as this season. This lineup is significantly better than Season 1, as we're only returning 1 starter in Austin Shenton, who's batting 7th, and that is impressive because he was our best offensive player last year, but his spot in the lineup is being taken over by Alec Burleson, who I have very high hopes for. He is batting 3rd, with our other big free agent signing, Jonah Bride, batting right behind him at #4. Then in the rotation, we are adding 3 new arms, with 2 of them being bullpen guys in Jacob Junis and Josh Winder, although Junis is getting the nod as our ace with a very electric 77 walks per 9. On top of that, this is a revamped bullpen returning only 2 arms, and we have a new closer in Jorge Lopez. Even with our top prospects in the minors, I'm very excited to play out season number 2, but maybe the biggest change from last year is we went from having 0 to 5 players in the top 100. Even with the changes though, we are ranked 30 in every category except for contact, shocked, so it should be another long year. Also, if you are enjoying the rebuild so far, please do me a favor and drop a like. It takes less than a second and really helps out my channel as we're facing off against the A's. Jacob Junis gets the start on opening day and has to be careful against Brent Rooker, but here's a nice play at second base, getting to it, and the throw's off the bag. Nearly a phenomenal play from Will Wagner, but fortunately the inning is over, so we are still scoreless after one as Bright hits a missile straight to Wilson. That is bad luck for the new guy, as here's good contact from Willie Calhoun, but laying out to make the play is Lawrence Butler. It feels like we're getting screwed over, but at least Junis is playing well. But our offense is still waiting on its first hit, and there we go, Austin Shenton. That is a familiar face for our very few fans, as now Reese McGuire gets on base, so we have a chance to rally for our first run of the season. Will Wagner cannot drop it in. That puts runners at the corners with 2 outs as Brown walks, so here is an RBI chance for Alec Burleson, who unfortunately gets underneath it. The Sharks are unable to capitalize, but Junis is holding it down, so this one is still scoreless. We have one aboard as Shenton takes one to the cheeks, so this is a prime opportunity, and there's another walk. We have the bases loaded for the second consecutive inning, except this time Gavin Cross delivers, so we have taken a 2-0 lead on opening day as Will Wagner extends our rally. That is great run support for Jacob Junis, who gives up a run, but it's still a 3-run lead, and Austin Shenton gets one right back. I don't want to speak too soon, but he hits righties very well and might be a long-term piece of this team, as he's gotten on base 3 times in what is looking like a win for this team. Jorge Lopez is in the game to close it out, and there is the final strike, as the Hawaii Sharks may be really bad, but they're undefeated on opening day. Winning this 4-game series is a long shot, but would be absolutely insane as we take 2 of them, so at least for our standards, we start off the season on a good note with a 500 record. However, now we're in a tie game against St. Louis in the top of the 9th, and we're in a little bit of trouble, but what a pitch. That is one of our new bullpen arms, Lucas Sims, and despite being a 68 overall, he has 99 pitch clutch and 99 break. With 2 runners in scoring position, he gets us out of the jam, so we have a chance to walk this off and start the season 3-2, which Pablo Reyes might have just done, sending this into right center field to the wall. It is caught. That looked really good coming off the bat, and unfortunately there's a 2-run bomb, so we need to rally with 2 runs and extras as Burleson flies out. The Sharks kept it close, but that home run was too much to come back from, so we're simulating the rest of the series, losing both games. Our record is 2-5, but we have been way more competitive than that tells us, as Gavin Cross gives us a late lead against Arizona. It has been so fun having an offense, as there's another bomb, so the Sharks make a statement with an unexpected series win against Arizona. This doesn't say much, but we're on pace to more than double our wins from season 1, so we're in a good place looking at this year's draft class where there are so many center fielders at the very top. This could be a great opportunity to add a player at one of the most important positions, but remember, I do have a restriction. If any player from this class is from Hawaii, I have to draft them in the first round, but I'm optimistic as there were none last year, and you have got to be kidding me. No matter what happens, we will be shocking the baseball world, drafting Kurt Gruniga, I think is how you say it, in the first round, as we are forced to pass on all of these elite position players at the top of the class, along with a starting pitcher who looks like an elite prospect. The Sharks are off to a better start than I expected, sweeping the Diamondbacks and winning one against the Dodgers, so we are very confident going into our next series against Miami, but they just broke a tie. Losing a series to them would be very humbling, so we need to start a rally, as we have 2 runners on base, but Jonah Bride hits into the game-losing double play. That is an unfortunate way to go down, but there's still 2 more games, so we still have a chance to get back to 500, and never mind. Unfortunately, we lose the series, so we're back down to a 6-9 record, and because we're in a slump, I am once again focusing my attention on scouting. Another week goes by, and we are 9-16, only getting worse, and after an encouraging start to the season, most of our offense is now on a cold streak. Even with all the new additions, Austin Shenton has been our best player, which is certainly a surprise, as he's leading us in home runs and RBIs, and so far, the signing of Alec Burleson is not really paying off. Our rotation has also been very underwhelming, with Joey Cantillo specifically being a huge disappointment, and that's a bummer considering he's from Hawaii. At least for a bright spot, our experiment of moving Josh Winder and Jacob Junis to full-time starters is paying off so far, but otherwise, our bullpen has been a flaming pile of trash. No surprise here, but not getting to choose our first-round pick is extremely annoying, but at least we're finding some solid options for round 2, as so far, Geraldo Lopez is no doubt my favorite player. There's also a new #1 player in the class, Pedro Salinas, who might fall to our pick at 38, but honestly, he's not my favorite player with a very low walks per nine, and instead I would prefer someone like the number 4 player in the class who has a much higher walks per nine. I'm also interested in this catcher Jeff Blanchard, who's definitely a long-term project but has very good contact. I'm a huge fan of trading on baseball, but I have a big problem. I live in Washington State where many forms of online sports trading aren't legal, but fortunately I found a solution for that with Kalshi.com. They're today's sponsor and the only place you can trade on baseball in all 50 states, along with other real-world events, whether it's sports, an election, or even the price of Bitcoin. You can trade on pretty much anything, but using baseball as an example, my Mariners have once again blown a division lead, but they're going into a series against an Orioles team that has surprisingly sucked. It is always risky putting money on my cursed franchise, but a 57% chance to win seems pretty low, so we're gonna do it. $100 would net me a $70 profit, as you're basically buying trades for 57 cents each, and if you win, they turn into a whole dollar. Kalshi has over 1 million users in all 50 states, and have facilitated over $1 billion in trades, so they're your best bet for MLB. Put your money where your mouth is and sign up using the link in my description. The first 500 traders to trade 100 contracts will get a $10 credit. We are looking to save our seasons, and the Rockies could be a great team to gain some confidence against, as we are tied 1-1 in the 8th inning. Now we have a chance to pull ahead, but our whole offense has been struggling, so we need a breakthrough if we want to win this game, as Will Wagner gives us a ride into right field, going all the way back where the defender cannot get it. That scores the go-ahead run. Now we have a chance to close it out, but I'm a bit nervous as Jorge Lopez loads the bases. Here is a 2-2 count to Michael Toglia, who fortunately pops it up, so the Sharks finally win another series. Despite their recent bad luck, they are only 1 game out of 4th place, so this season is far from hopeless as we're taking on the Astros. They're currently in 3rd place and are one of the teams we're trying to jump in the division, and in Season 2, not finishing in last would be awesome. We are still tied up in the 9th inning as neither side is breaking through, so we are going to extras once again. That was a nasty strikeout from Sims, but he walks Pena, so with 2 runners on, we are in a bit of hot water, but fortunately we get bailed out. Now we can walk it off in front of our home crowd as Brown gets extremely lucky, so the winning run is on 3rd base, and there we go, Gavin Cross is gonna end it. That is a signature win for Hawaii against a division rival, as they take the first 2 games of a 4-game series, and that is a sweep. In just a week, the Sharks have launched themselves back into 3rd place, and it seems that most of our offense is no longer on a cold streak, with guys like Alec Burleson and Willie Calhoun rapidly getting better. Also in the rotation, Josh Winder has been nothing short of amazing, putting up an ERA of 2.83 and a whip of 1.19. That is hands down the best stat line in our rotation, so I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do the rest of the year. We continue scouting, and I haven't given many updates so far, but there's a good reason for that, as we're finding some decent players, but still need to finish a lot of profiles to find out how good they really are. Just because I'm required to take him at number 2, I will not be scouting Kurt Grunega, since it seems like kind of a waste, but at least in the 2nd round, there are some solid options like 3rd baseman Geraldo Lopez, along with a whole bunch of shortstops that I would be interested in. I'm confident this can be a solid class, especially if our discovery guys come through again, and I'm looking to bolster a farm system that's already showing some very promising development early on in the season. I don't have much of a plan for the draft, but we're getting some bad news as my favorite discovery pitcher, Dan Seymour, is injured. That is unfortunate, as he is now completely off my board, but on the bright side, our discovery guys found the number 7 player in the class in 1st baseman Ross Diaz. We already have our 1st baseman of the future, but this guy is way too good to pass on, and as it stands, he might be our best option in the 2nd round. At the beginning of July, we are 36-55, but have lost 8 out of our last 10, so we could really use a spark in this series against Washington, and there is an Alec Burleson home run to give us the lead. We've been waiting on that from him pretty much all season, and that dinger came at the perfect time as we rally back to take the lead, and now it's time for the 9th inning. So far, it has been an up and down season for Jorge Lopez, who already has 4 blown saves, but he's also on pace for 40 saves and has an ERA under 3. The inning starts with a James Woods single, but here is out number 2, so we just need 1 more with the tying run on 2nd base, and of course that sneaks up the middle. It feels like every game we've jumped into has gone into extras, and now with 2 outs in the 9th, it will happen once again. This is not where I want to be, as we immediately give up a run, so now our backs are against the wall, but Will Wagner is able to save us with an RBI single. We were not trailing for long, as that was the first pitch he saw, and after another walk, the bases are loaded, and Pablo Reyes is looking to end this with a drive into right center field, but never mind. We were feet away from an epic ending as Garcia goes yard, and that will secure a demoralizing amazing defeat for the Sharks. Reyes had that one looking so good off the bat, but in the end it didn't matter, so I'm pretty upset about that, but there's still one more game in the series which we are going to simulate and win. It may not have been a walk-off grand slam, but that will take our team out of its slump, as players like Alec Burleson and Willie Calhoun are still carrying us, as our offense is surprisingly in the middle of the pack, ranking 20th for total hits. That will take us into the MLB draft, where we have the number 2 pick with tons of good players available, but of course, rather than acquiring an impact player, we are stuck taking the one player from Hawaii, second baseman Kurt Grunega, who is the number 75 player on the board. I'm really hoping he's at least a decent player, but probably won't be near the top of our draft, so we're basically skipping the first round, starting in the second, where Ross Diaz will be my target. He is the highest ranked position player on my board, and as a discovery guy, he should be available in the second round, but in the event that he's taken earlier than expected, I still want to go for a position player, very likely Geraldo Lopez. I'm also interested in drafting a shortstop in this class, and right now the pick would be between Alec Becker and Miguel Gonzalez, with the slight edge going to Becker. Before either of them though, I'm very interested in left fielder Caden Estrada, who would be a really good target in the 3rd or 4th round, so we definitely have options, as there's also center fielder Andres Ojeda, who could be a very solid developmental center fielder. We are ripping the band-aid off at number 2, taking Kurt Grunega, and I know that's probably not the right pronunciation, but I really don't want to get canceled, so I'm just gonna stick with that and change his name later. I am really hoping he is not a bust, as I would prefer not to waste my first round pick, and now the wait for Ross Diaz begins. I am simming to our next selection, and Diaz is gone, and while it's extremely rare for discovery guys to go in the first round, it does happen from time to time, but it's so unfortunate to lose a guy who's ready for the majors right now. That is really painful, but at least we have a good backup option, and I'm very excited about Geraldo Lopez. He is being added to the team. Our next target is Caden Estrada, and I'm gonna be so upset if we lose another discovery guy. As we simulate to our next selection, thankfully he is still on the board. At least we got one of the guys we wanted, as I am pulling the trigger on Estrada, who should be pretty good, but the downside of that is we're likely missing out on Alec Becker, who I'm a huge fan of. Unfortunately, my backup option went at pick number 89, so this might get a little bit ugly, as we are simulating to our next selection, and of course, Becker is gone. He is our second target that has been snatched up by the Tigers, so this is not going my way, so we're taking the best player available and moving on to the next round. On the bright side, good catchers are hard to come by, and Jeff Blanchard could be a good one with solid contact. And now with our final 2 selections, I am only seeing discovery pitchers, so we're gonna take 2 of them, starting with Alejandro Peralta. Certainly not the best draft, but at least it balances out the pure insanity from last year, as we're ending off with another pitcher. And to my surprise, we are 41 and 57 at the break, which is pretty middle of the road. This team is already exceeding my expectations in year 2, as Willie Calhoun is absolutely raking for us, alongside another year 1 Shark in Austin Shenton. Those guys are the leaders on offense, alongside Jonah Bride and Alec Burleson, who we signed in free agency, along with Seth Brown, who was a Rule 5 draft pick. We currently have 4 guys above 700 OPS, which I cannot believe, and even though they're listed as relievers, Josh Winder and Jacob Junis continue to be our best starters. It's been another disappointing year for Joey Cantillo, who I honestly had higher hopes for, but he's simply not developing the way we wanted, so I assumed that our team ERA would be somewhere near the bottom, but to my surprise, I continue to scroll as we come in at 21st. Josh Winder, Jacob Junis, and Cody Petit are definitely holding that up, and it should only be a matter of time before they're joined by Jordy Wagner, who's playing extremely well at AA, along with Cristobal Escalona, who is also developing very nicely. Considering their great performances, I think it's time to move them up to AAA to get them one step closer to reaching the show. This year, our only all-star is Josh Winder, but unlike last year, he actually earned his way into the game instead of being put there by default. It has been an incredible year for him, and he's definitely a building block for the future, as he has not even hit arbitration yet and has 3 years to go until free agency. All I wanted this season was to identify players to build the team around and not finish in last place, and even though we are not making the playoffs, we're sitting at almost 50 wins entering August, as it's time to view our draft. I have zero confidence in this class, but at least our second and third round picks should be pretty good, as we're checking it out, and that is pretty much what I expected. First of all, the player from Hawaii that we were forced to draft actually turned out pretty good, and while he is 49 overall, 83 potential gives him a chance to at least develop into something. For a player we had no say in drafting, anything is better than nothing, but our draft truly started with the selection of Geraldo Lopez in the second round, who's already 60 overall. Mark my words, this man is making the major leagues in this franchise, as he is starting out with very good hitting stats, and I don't really care about the defense. That is a great pull in the second round, which I'm very thankful for considering he was our backup option, as our #1 target, Ross Diaz, was actually selected by the Tigers in the first round, and he's definitely a step above Lopez, which is disappointing. Then they also stole another target from me, and that was Alan Becker, who's nothing special but would have been a good developmental shortstop, and that is especially painful considering we drafted Caden Estrada instead. Don't get me wrong, Estrada's a good player and will likely make it up to the majors, but his starting overall is only 2 points higher than Becker, who is also 18 years old and plays shortstop, which is a more valuable position. In my book, that is a miss, but at least we made up for it with the selection of Jeff Blanchard, who comes in with 94 potential and 54 overall. After looking through, he is the best developmental player in the draft, hands down, and we selected him in round 4, which is truly incredible. Then to close things out, we took 2 discovery pitchers, and they could not be more different, as Alejandro Peralta comes in with 79 potential, but a 69 overall right out the gate. He is a good player who could at least be a back-end starter for us, which is all we need, as we ended things off with Ray Navarro, who has better potential, but is way more of a project. Obviously, this draft class was not the greatest on the channel, but I still feel like we did a pretty good job, as we fill several needs with good players. No way we're making the playoffs, so I'd say there's nothing left to see here, as we are simulating out the month of August, and as last year's draft picks continue to get better, it is so tempting to bring them up, especially closing pitcher Geronimo Salas, who is now up to 8 potential, but for the sake of service time manipulation, I am holding off at least until next year. Another player who definitely deserves a call-up is Bradford Woodward, who of course was our first round pick in season 1, and his contact versus right is already up to 89, as he is raking in AAA. Right now, I could see everybody except for Charlie Head getting the call-up, and if we play our cards right, season 3 could be absolutely electric. We finished season 2 with a very nice 69 and 93 record, and I know that's pretty bad, but at least we were not the worst team in the American League. The Astros lost 104 games. Also, if we were in the National League, we would have only been the 4th worst team, which is certainly improvement. For some reason, when I simulated the rest of the year, Akil Baddoo and Tyler Freeman were signed by the CPU, so just ignore them. But the same guys who performed well in the first half of the season also played well in the second, so that could be a good sign for things to come. I would say the core of the rebuild is nearly complete, so I'm excited to go into this offseason and hopefully add a few players that can make us competitive. Looking at our lineup, I would say our biggest needs right now are second base and center field, judging how Will Wagner and Gavin Cross both played. But if possible, I'd also like to add a shortstop, as Pablo Reyes is getting up there in age and is really nothing special. We did bring in Luis Arias on a 1-year deal, so he could at least come off the bench, but I'm also very intrigued by Akil Baddoo, who the CPU signed late in the season, but I actually feel like he could move over to center field and do a good job. Unfortunately, on the pitching side of things, Joey Cantillo is not getting any better, so it might be time to move on from him, or at least bring in another starter to compete, and that is why I'm bringing in Ken Waldichuk, just trying to improve the rotation. Then for the position guys, there aren't many options this year, but I do really like Daniel Schneemann, who I feel could be our everyday second baseman. We're not really players for the #1 pick since we finished 69 and 93, but we still have a 7.5% chance, so why not simulate? As the great thing about the lottery is there are risers every single year, and let's go up to number 3. I think the best thing about this is not only did we jump several teams, but that includes our division rivals, the Houston Astros, who go down to number 7. For that reason alone, this offseason was an absolute win, as we also got all 3 of the players we were going after. So here is our new starting lineup entering season 3, with the exception of 1 player. Normally, cheap organizations like us will wait to bring up their top prospects for service time manipulation, but that will not be the case for Bradford Woodward, and that's because we get a first-round pick if he wins Rookie of the Year. That is more than enough incentive to bring up one of our best players on the roster, and I have very high expectations due to his great contact. Even though he's listed as a right fielder, Alec Burleson plays there, so we're playing Bradford Woodward in center field, who is pretty athletic. It took a while to get going, but I can confidently say that our future looks extremely bright, with prospects continuing to come up to the show, and out of our 10 top 100 prospects, there should definitely be more on the way as the season progresses. Opening day of season 3 is against the Houston Astros, and of course, they were actually worse than us last year. What a double play. Altuve singled, but it didn't matter. So here is our offense for the first time, and what a start. Pablo Reyes got a slider right over the middle. It's hard to ask for a better start than that, as we score again in the 3rd. So Pablo Reyes gets another RBI chance that he is not going to take for granted. That's scores another. The Sharks have come out biting on opening day, and it's clear the Astros are as bad as their record last year says, because they have already pulled their starting pitcher and we go up 6-0 on a sac fly. Right now, Houston does not stand a chance as Luis Arias drops in another RBI, and on top of that, Jacob Junis is having a great day. We start the year strong with an 8-0 shutout victory over our division rival, and I really hope this is our first glance at the greatness that's coming. However, one thing I forgot to do in that first game is change the name of Bradford Woodward, because if you didn't know, I let all of my YouTube channel members change the names of my draft picks. If you want to become a channel member and get a player on the team, that link is in the description, but moving forward, Brandon Woodward is now known as Rick James, just like the singer. By the way, in that first game, he had 3 singles, so I'm really looking forward to his future, as we are looking for our first series win of the year, and how about 3 out of 4? We own the Astros, but now we're also going for a sweep against the Chicago White Sox, and if we can pull it off, we would start the year 6-1. I'm cautiously optimistic because both of these teams are pretty bad, but that is an insane error to get runners at 2-3. I would say this is a video game, but that looks kind of like watching the real-life White Sox, especially because they give up a home run immediately after. That gives us a 4-run lead, and now Rick James is making his early statement for Rookie of the Year with a deep grand slam to ice the game. Early on, it looks like calling up the number 2 pick was the right move as we win 9-1. So after the first week, we are in the mix for the AL West lead, but those 2 series were just warm-ups for the next one against the Dodgers. Going toe-to-toe with an undefeated super team like this one would show the whole world that we're a contender rather than a pretender, but that is much easier said than done as we lose the first game. Then in game 2, we're trailing by 2 runs in the 8th inning, but Alec Burleson belts this into right field, so we might have a chance. We're really counting on Burleson to break through in his second year with the team, and so far he's had a lot of success that I'm really hoping he continues. It's a 1-run game, so it's up to our bullpen, and new addition James Karinchak went 1-2-3, but we could really use an insurance run. Unfortunately though, they're facing the bottom of our lineup, which is still pretty thin, so the game is now in the hands of 34-year-old closer Jorge Lopez, who's off to a rocky start. However, this could be his chance to correct the ship, as there's a quick out number 1, but now we're back to the top of the order, which is pretty terrifying. Nice play at first, Bride blocks it, the throw will be in time. There's now just 1 out to go as Betts swings and misses, so the Hawaii Sharks have won a game against the Dodgers, and by the way, let me know in the comments what you think of our jerseys. The reason I ask is I'm not an artist or anything, but I do really enjoy making these uniforms, and I'm always looking for suggestions on how to make them better. But taking a look at this class, we will be using our first round pick on Eric Strawberry. That is a huge bummer because once again, there are some great players at the top of the board that I would love to take instead, but due to our rule, we are selecting Strawberry and there's nothing we can do about it. Every draft is different, but I'm not too concerned about this because of how it worked out last year, as we were forced to use our first round pick on a Hawaiian player, but still had a really nice class. Thinking about our needs though, we always draft starting pitchers, so I'm gonna select that, but going down the list, we've selected a good catcher, first baseman, and third baseman, so I think I'll set our needs as shortstop and center field. The catcher we drafted in the 4th round, Jeff Blanchard, is actually the number 3 prospect in baseball, and with this contact, he might be at the show sooner rather than later, which is exciting. He is also joined by Jordy Wagner, who's at number 10, along with Rick James at 13, and of course, he's already at the show, but he could be joined by closing pitcher Geronimo Salas, who's a 78 overall, along with Wagner and Cristobal Escalona, who is 76 overall. However, all that aside, it is time for the final game of the series against the Dodgers, and it's another close one that they win. That is not surprising, but the thing that is we are now in first place, and we have a chance to extend that against the last place Mariners as Luis Arias finally drives in the first run of this game. That is perfect timing, and now Daniel Schneemann loads the bases, which perfectly sets up Alec Burleson to drive in another run. This will stay in the yard, but it's a sac fly. Thanks to the late rally, the Sharks win this game 2-0 and take the series, but there's still one more game, so we're going for the sweep with Joey Cantillo on the mound, and of course he blows it again. He was very underwhelming in his first 2 seasons, but this is his worst start yet, and because we're winning games, I might have to replace him with a younger player sooner rather than later, which is certainly not a concern if they play anywhere near as well as Rick James. A 2-run double just gave us the lead against the A's, and we would ice it with another run in the same inning. After our first week of scouting, we might have found a gem in David Nam, who immediately goes up to rank 82, and that's very exciting because he's a guy that we could get in the 2nd or 3rd round. It looks like a strong third base class, so I'm scouting another one, but even though we have to draft Eric Strawberry, I'm also going to scout some other shortstops like Paul Jimenez and Leonardo Fernandez. We earn a sweep against the Athletics, but now we lose 2 in a row to the Cardinals, so we lose the series and have to bounce back against New York. We are tied up at 3 apiece in the 7th, at least until this sac fly from Austin Shenton. So once again, we're playing in a close game, but a quality start from Josh Winder has given us the advantage. With runners at the corners, the Sharks are looking for an insurance run, and while that's bobbled, the throw will be in time. That leaves our bullpen in a pretty tough spot, but we strike out Aaron Judge and retire the side, giving Lopez another save chance as he collects the final strikeout. That is a big win against a great team as Rick James goes 3 for 4 with a home run. So the Sharks now have a 5.5 game lead in first place with a 16-6 record. No doubt the first round rookie Rick James has been the MVP of the team so far with a 361 average and a 966 OPS. So no surprise, he is leading for rookie of the year, on pace to give us a first round draft pick. He has been awesome and is also second on the team in RBIs, only behind Austin Shenton, who seems to get better every year. I know it's very early on, but he is hitting 293 with an 804 OPS. So even though we've drafted a good third baseman, Austin Shenton will not go away, continuing to prove why he should be a long-term part of the team. Then in our rotation, I am not kidding when I say that everyone has been good except for Joey Cantillo, so I'm giving him one more chance to make things right before I consider sending him down to AAA. Thankfully though, in his next start, Cantillo was able to hold them to 1 run, but Karinchak loads the bases, so we're definitely in a bit of trouble as he leaves a curveball over the plate that scores the go-ahead run. Cantillo did his job, but we might still be cooked as Burleson goes the other way, it drifts foul. He was so close to a double or even a home run, and the Sharks have been so good this season in clutch moments, but down 1, the heart of our order cannot get it done. At least this game showed that Joey Cantillo will last a bit longer, so at least for now there will be no changes to the roster as we simulate the next game, which we win. That leaves just one more game in the series as it's a close one, but you can't win them all, and I'm worried that our offense is finally stalling out. However, we can walk this off against Washington, but Seth Brown pops it up, and that's painful because that looked like a home run pitch. That means we're going back to extras where Shenton starts out advancing the runner, as our bullpen gave us an easy walk-off chance that we waste again. It has been an incredible start to the season, but we're starting to show our weakness, yet once again, Jorge Lopez keeps us alive. We cannot waste another opportunity, and Daniel Schneemann finally ends this game. What an absolute relief. It's just the Nats, but we're celebrating this walk-off like we won the World Series, and I guess it was still an important victory as we win another series. I think we're done discovering international pitchers, so I'm moving on to the Central region, but I'm still gonna scout them another week to get this progress up, while also finishing the profile on shortstop Leonardo Fernandez, who could be either really good or really bad. At the start of May, we are 22-9, which is one of the best records in baseball, in fact, the second best, only behind the Dodgers. We closed out April on a very good note, beating Washington 12-2, and while 12 runs in this game should silence any concern about our offense, I think the best news is Joey Cantillo only allowed 2 runs. That is another victory to put him back on a good trajectory, along with our other 4 starters, which would be incredible, especially considering Jacob Junis is in 3rd place for the Cy Young at 34 years old. He has had a career revival with Hawaii with a 2.91 ERA and a whip under 1, and with 1 year remaining on his contract, we need to resign him quick. The good news only continues for the Sharks, as after another week of scouting, Leonardo Fernandez is the number 51 ranked player on the board, which is awesome. We might have found our shortstop of the future, and that is great news considering we don't really have a great prospect in the farm right now. We should not be winning this many games, yet we just beat the Yankees 17-6, and it seems that everybody on the offense is playing at a very high level. I've been waiting for this team to collapse, but for some reason it's not happening, as we are now in extra innings against the Yankees where they take the lead. Winning this series could extend our division lead to 10 games, but I'm not confident after a brutal swing and miss, and you've got to be kidding me. Luis Arias ends the game. He got a great pitch to hit and took full advantage as we walk off the series, and it doesn't get much better than that. We are setting this team up to be a dynasty as we have brought in the right guys in free agency and are still waiting on the development of several guys in the minor leagues, and it's really tough not to be so excited about the Sharks and their future. I am very optimistic about the season, but we need to be careful because it's still early in the season, but there's another series win, this time against Baltimore. We also just found the number 3 overall player in the class who might not be there at pick 45, but if he is the immediate selection. For my next target, I think I have to go for Octavio Chavez. With a name like that, there's no way he's a bust. At the beginning of June, we are 43-18 with a 9.5 game lead in the West, so we have without a doubt been baseball's biggest surprise team, but the crazy thing about this is there's room to get even better. Some of our best overall players are not even at the show yet, like Geronimo Salas and Cristobal Escalona, and both players have nothing left to prove in the minors. They're getting the call up. I'm not exactly sure where Escalona fits into our rotation right now, but we'll figure that out as time goes on, because right now the most important thing is we get these guys up to the show, continuing to call up more of our top prospects. However, I do still have to rename both of them, as Geronimo Salas becomes Aziz King, and Escalona will now be called Christian Adames. We are jumping into Adames's debut, simming it out to see how it goes as we strike first with 3 runs. That is a great cushion for the rookie, who is still not giving up a hit, so he is on pace for a perfect game, which Varsho is gonna break up in the 6th. Regardless though, what a great start to his career, as that 1 hit is still all he's given up in the 9th inning. However, now our offense can rally with the bases loaded and no one out, as that's gonna drop in for an RBI. So it is 5-0, and Seth Brown's trying to pour it on, going deep into right field. That is gone for a home run. There is a 3-run homer for the big slugger, and that would spark Adames to a complete game shutout. What a start to his career. He went all 9 innings, only allowing 2 hits, and on top of that, our offense did exactly what it needed to. It really can't get much better than that as we continue winning games, and we advance all the way to the MLB draft, where I'm very excited because there's a player I really like on the board in Luis Ramirez. He looks electric, so I would love to take him at number 3, but of course there's a huge problem, as due to the restrictions of the rebuild, because Eric Strawberry's from Hawaii, he has to be my first pick no matter what. He's probably gonna be a bust, and I just noticed this, but the shortstop that I really wanted, Leonardo Fernandez, is injured. That takes a great player right off the board, and to make things worse, he was my backup option to Ramirez, who's probably not gonna be on the board at 45. If he's gone, I don't know what I'm gonna do, and will very likely be reaching for a player that I could take later, which more than likely will either be a starting pitcher or someone like Tim Ruth or David Nam. With the 3rd overall pick, the Hawaii Sharks, for the 2nd straight year, select everybody, taking a Hawaiian native, Eric Strawberry, who they probably could have gotten in the 2nd round. That more than likely is going to be a comical bust, and of course simming to our next selection, just like we thought, my favorite options are gone. Luis Ramirez went at number 15, which was a round earlier than expected, and to make things even worse, our backup option, Tim Ruth, went a few selections before our pick. That puts us in a bit of a pickle, but fortunately for us, the number 43 player in the MLB and number 3 player on our board is still here, and in this spot, Roy Stevenson is the best value we could get. I am pulling the trigger. I am very glad he didn't get selected, because we come out with a pretty good player as we sim forward, and there's still some pretty good prospects on the board, including Franklin Manning, who has a guaranteed high potential, and between him and this 3rd baseman, it looks like he is the better option. That was a good move, as the 3rd baseman is still on the board in round 4, but I also see Leonardo Fernandez, which creates a very interesting dilemma. Because he's injured, he's a coin flip away from being a superstar or a complete bust, and also he's at a position that we actually need. After thinking about it though, I just can't risk it, so I'm going for the 3rd baseman. Despite his great name, I am passing on Octavio Chavez in round 5, since we already drafted an outfielder, and instead I will be selecting Ken Shibuya, who at the very least should have a good walks per 9. If Chavez was still on the board in round 6, he would have been my guy, but instead there's a bunch of discovery pitchers along with an injured closer. I don't think I ever do this, but we've already taken 2 starters, so why not take a flyer on Ryan Stafford, just because we have nothing to lose. That draft really did not go our way, but I still feel like we got a solid haul, and at this point in the rebuild, our core is already put together, and we're just trying to call everybody up and maybe add some more depth. At the All-Star break, we are still going strong with a 7-game division lead, and checking out the stats, it has been a big year for Alec Burleson, who is leading our team in hits and home runs while being 2nd in RBIs. The leader in RBIs is Austin Shenton, who is not slowed down with an 809 OPS and continues to improve, so he's solidified himself as a long-term piece of this team, along with Rick James, who might be our overall best player. It's also nice to see Jonah Bride right behind Burleson as usual, as they were brought in the same free agent class and have made a similar impact, but along with them, this past season's free agent signings, Luis Arias and Daniel Schneemann, are both contributing positively to our team. The offense has obviously been a huge story, but I think above all else, I have been shocked by what this rotation has done, as Jacob Junis and Josh Winder are both playing at a Cy Young level, and new addition Ken Waldichuk is also playing very respectively as a 5 starter. As always though, it feels like Joey Cantillo's been a little bit more up and down than we want, but that is all being balanced out by the rookie Christian Adames, who is off to an amazing start at the major league level. It is only our 3rd year of existence, but our rotation's ERA is the best in the league, and along with that, we also have a top 5 offense, which is is great. However, I still have not talked about our bullpen, which has been nothing short of amazing, as there has not been a single weak link ever since bringing up closing pitcher Aziz King. In his first 29 innings, he has an ERA and a whip under 1, but he still is not our closer, as Jorge Lopez is having a breakout season at age 34. We have brought up 3 rookies this year, and they are all making an insane impact, but there are still many prospects we have to bring up, such as Jordy Wagner and even Dave Marcello. It has been a dream season for the Sharks, but there's still another half to play, and right now we're trailing by a run to Seattle. It is very important that we win this series, as the Mariners are in second place, and while they're 7 games behind us, they are heating up and we cannot afford it. However, Rick James doubles in the 8th inning, and Schneeman's gonna advance him to 3rd, so Alec Burleson can tie the game, but what a play at first. That is a very unfortunate break for the Sharks, but on their next at bat, Jonah Bride comes through. Not only do we score James, but we take the lead, and Jorge Lopez earns another save. We won our first series out of the break, and now with Adames on the mound, we get the sweep, so our team is riding high, so as we approach the trade deadline, I'm gonna keep checking on the block to see if we can make a move. One player I'm very interested in is David Fry, who has 2 years of arbitration after this, and on top of that, he has a lot of quirks and is extremely versatile. He is also having a great season with Cleveland, who's kinda underperforming, so they're looking to sell, and in order to get Fry, I'm giving up one of the best developmental pitchers in our system, Ray Navarro, who we just drafted last year. That'll get the deal done 1 for 1. That is hands down the most expensive contract we put on the books yet, but hopefully it's worth it, as our payroll has surged up to $55 million. As promised, we are also extending Jacob Junis, and because he's 34 years old and listed as a reliever, this ended up being a bargain for $2.2 million a year. That is a no-brainer contract, even if he ends up regressing, as we're in a tie game against Texas, and we really need to win this one, as they're trying to sweep a 3-game series, but Alec Burleson just took them deep. A 9th inning home run will give us the lead, along with the win, as the Sharks avoid a sweep to end the month. We are 76-37 at the beginning of August, with an 11.5 game division lead, and of course, the start of August is also special because we get to see our draft picks. I've seen a lot of prospects who look like Eric Strawberry, and I'm calling it right now, there's no way he's gonna be good, so we're counting on the rest of our class to pull weight, and honestly, that is not the best. There are some blue potentials down the board, but this is not the class I was hoping for, as Eric Strawberry is even worse than I thought he would be, coming in at 68 potential, so we waste another first rounder. Our draft really started in the 2nd round, but of course my favorite player was not available, as he went at number 15 to the Giants, and this would have been an insane pull. Luis Ramirez is coming in with 97 speed at 18 years old, and should develop into one of the best center fielders in baseball, but to be fair, we still ended up with a great player in Royce Stevenson, who I did not expect to be on the board. He is also 18 years old, and is coming in with a 59 walks per 9 at 62 overall already, so he looks like the next best Hawaii Sharks pitcher, which I'm super excited about. Then in round 3, we took Franklin Manning, who does actually look pretty okay, although the contact needs a ton of work, and on top of that, he's 20 years old, so who knows if he will actually develop. Then we had a huge dilemma in round 4 to either take the safer selection in Todd Abernathy, who's certainly less flashy, or take a massive risk on an injured shortstop who has a higher ceiling. Leonardo Fernandez was drafted by the Pirates, and as you can see, he is a 90 potential with 50 overall right out the gate, so unfortunately for us, we do lose the coin flip, but he wasn't as good as I expected, so it's not that big of a deal. However, Abernathy is an even bigger project with a long way to go, and is no doubt the worst player, and I don't think he's ever going to become anything. Without a doubt, that is a miss in round 4, and then in round 5, we drafted Ken Shibuya, who's coming in with lower potential, but at least he's 71 overall with a 74 walks per 9. Definitely not a bad selection, but I think that shows that this draft class overall was not very strong, although we do get some good news, as Ryan Stafford, the injured closer we drafted to close out, is coming in at 71 overall with a 92 potential. That is a great addition to an already dominant bullpen, so despite missing out on our shortstop and our center fielder, we end the draft off pretty well. I'm very excited for those guys to refuel a farm that's still the best in the league despite 3 different graduations, as Jeff Blanchard is now the number 2 prospect in baseball, and his improvement has been nothing short of amazing. At 18 years old, he is destroying AA with a 342 average and a 922 OPS, and as a result, his contact, which is already a strength, is getting way better. I have never seen a player improve this much, but we also have guys like Jordy Wagner and Dave Marcello, who might be called up before the end of the year, but despite just being drafted as a project last year, I think Jeff Blanchard is on a fast track to the major leagues, and is already getting the AAA call-up, so we'll see what he can do there. Other players to keep an eye on are Charlie Head, who's playing pretty well leading off at AA, but the main guy I want to highlight is Geraldo Lopez, who's already up to 64 overall despite getting drafted last year, and he's another guy whose contact is only getting better as he's heated up as the season's progressed. We are preparing to make a run for the playoffs, but before we do that, there's one more thing I need to take care of, and that is Joey Cantillo. I feel like we've given this guy so many chances, yet he continues to underwhelm us, putting up a 4.31 ERA in a long reliever role, which is certainly not acceptable. Fortunately though, we're in a pretty good situation with the number 7 prospect in baseball, Jordy Wagner, who is a 20-year-old with A potential and should only get better. Finally, after years of waiting, we are sending Joey Cantillo down to AAA to get right, and we're calling up our 4th rookie to the MLB level. Now there's a ton of upside in this lineup as Christian Adames continues his excellent season, and I'm excited to see what Wagner can do. However, with such a massive division lead, I think we're safe to simulate August and see where we're at, and no surprise here, our division lead only grows bigger. So far, Jordy Wagner's MLB career is off to a great start as he's already up to 73 overall, and in 5 starts, he has a 3-1 record with a 2.59 ERA. If he finishes the year strong, he might join the rotation in the playoffs, and now in a close game against Texas, Rick James goes deep. At this point, there is no doubt he is the American League Rookie of the Year, as this 5-1 victory helps us sweep the Rangers as Jordy Wagner went 6 innings with 3 hits and 1 run. He has been a quality addition to a team that has won 100 games, and honestly, we don't have much to prove now, so I'm simulating to the end of the year. We finished 106 and 56, which of course was the best record in the American League, but even more impressively, the best in all of baseball. This season felt like the perfect marriage of production from free agents and also rookies making an instant impact, which in my opinion is the biggest reason we won this many games. Trading for David Fry at the deadline was also a great decision as he had over 100 RBIs and also led the team in home runs, as he joined a lineup of power hitters like Jonah Bride, Alec Burleson, and Austin Shenton. Then there's rookie outfielder Rick James, who as I've said all season is probably our best all-around player, hitting for 300 with an 854 OPS and 70 RBIs of his own. His development at just 23 years old has me so excited about what's to come for the future, as his ceiling is still a lot higher, but winning Rookie of the Year is a great start, especially because it gets us a first-round draft pick. As far as other awards, I'm not expecting much, although I'm surprised that we don't have a Cy Young finalist after Jacob Junis was in the mix, but we definitely make up for it as Jorge Lopez is this year's reliever of the year. This is very well deserved as he led the entire American League in saves and also put up a 1.61 ERA at 34 years old, and while Aziz King may be the closer of our future, Jorge Lopez has not done anything to lose the job. It's also worth noting that Christian Adames finished in 3rd place for Rookie of the Year despite a late call-up, and that reminds me that I need to talk about our bullpen, which was lights out for pretty much the entire season. For the 2nd straight year, our rotation was led by 2 relievers in Jacob Junis and Josh Winder, who once again proved that overall rating doesn't really mean anything in MLB The Show. Having a good walks and hits per 9 can go a long way for a pitcher, as Jacob Junis had a career season, and Josh Winder was somehow even better than he was last year. However, this year, the veterans were joined by rookies Christian Adames and Jordy Wagner, who definitely pulled their weight after getting called up later in the season, and I'm very excited to have both of them in the playoffs where I think they can cook. Our rotation was amazing, but honestly, our entire pitching staff deserves props, because scrolling down the list, you're not going to find a single ERA above 4, which is simply ridiculous. We were an excellent regular season team, but the playoffs is going to be a completely different beast as we're taking on a familiar face. We have played Seattle so many times throughout the rebuild, and honestly, I didn't realize just how scary they are with Vlad Jr. on their side, and unlike in most of the franchises I play, they have not traded away any of their core. This is going to be tough. I think the only good news for us is their offense is not that great, although maybe I spoke too soon. They strike first, and in the 6th inning, Logan Gilbert is shutting us out. This game is very close to being over as there's a 3-run bomb, and our young team just got completely embarrassed by a way better Seattle squad. It is so important that we start fast in game 2 as there's a run, and I feel pretty good as Josh Winder's on the mound, but he gives up a home run and then another. Just like that, our hope is gone, and it's very clear we have a lot more work to do. This is a wake-up call that we're not as good as we thought we were, as we're simulating game 3, and that is an embarrassing sweep. It doesn't get much worse than that, but on the bright side, we're still a very young team with a core that is only going to get better, but with many of our our best players hitting arbitration, it's getting more expensive to keep the team together. This means we won't be able to add much in free agency, but we still need to make a move to get better, so I'm trading for catcher Ivan Herrera from the Cardinals, who I think can make a huge difference. He has developed into a great offensive catcher, and he has 2 years remaining before free agency, so it's not going to cost too much to get him, as they'll do this trade straight up for Joey Cantillo and new draft pick Tom Abernathy. I know we have number 2 prospect Jeff Blanchard rising through the ranks, but right now catcher is our weakest position, so we needed to address it. But aside from that, the only other move we made was signing Slade Ciccone in free agency, who I'm very excited about. He's only 76 overall, but he might be deadly, as his walks per 9 is 90. That might have been the shortest offseason of my life, as we're advancing to season number 4 with one new addition to our lineup in Ivan Herrera, and honestly that could make all the difference, as he's an absolute monster. Then in the rotation, Slade Ciccone takes Ken Waldichuk's former spot at number 4, and Waldichuk moves to the bullpen as a long reliever. Aside from him though, the bullpen is pretty much the exact same as last year, and I'm excited about that since they were electric last season. As far as our farm system goes, our top guys Jeff Blanchard and Royce Stevenson need a lot more development, but there's a good chance we could see Ryan Stafford and Dave Marcello this season. The same can also be said for Alejandro Peralta, who is 73 overall and could be a good plan B in the rotation in case somebody regresses. Now that we're actually competing for the playoffs, the regular season will go pretty fast, and that also includes scouting, although I need to go through every prospect to see if there's anybody from Hawaii. I have not been able to choose our first round pick for 2 years in a row and make that 3, as we have to select Howard Glass. However, this year it's okay because we have an extra first round pick at number 33 that I'm hoping to take advantage of, and we definitely need all the help we can get because it's kind of embarrassing to say this, but we only have 4 top 100 guys. Dave Marcello is our last guy at number 39, and then after that it drops off, so I'm really relying on this draft to get our future back on track. 2 weeks into the season, the Sharks are off to a good start and are on a win streak, as our rotation looks to be even better with the addition of Slade Ciccone and full years of pitching from Christian Adames and Jordy Wagner. Then on offense, it seems the same players are producing, as Alec Burleson leads the team in home runs and RBIs, with Rick James and David Fry right behind him, and a bit further down the list is the new addition Ivan Herrera. Moving forward to late May, we have a 13-game division lead, so while we're having an excellent year with so many players on hot streaks, the one thing I'm worried about is the regression of Jacob Junis, who's finally starting to fade at 35 years old. Obviously that's something to plan ahead for, but we're still winning a lot of games, so until his performance slips, I'm not really worried about it, as he's currently leading the best rotation in MLB. I know I'm moving really fast, but we all know this team is ready to get back to the playoffs, as we're an absurd 72-24 entering the draft. To my surprise though, our offense is number 1 in the league in every category, and I assumed that ERA would be the only one that we're leading in, but we're actually in second. Number 2 is still really good, but I might make some changes to the order of the rotation for the second half, as if we scroll down, Jordy Wagner is playing out of his mind. These are ace level numbers for the second year 21-year-old, and the funny thing is, they're nearly identical to what he put up in limited time last year. Last season, I assumed that Christian Adames was our ace in waiting, but he has not been the best in his second season, and meanwhile, Jordy Wagner is in the Cy Young race. Jacob Junis is still a great player, especially for the contract he's on, and ever since that playoff series against Seattle, he has not played like an ace, and it might be time to take him out of that role. Then on offense, Alec Burleson continues to be our superstar, but he's also getting some help from David Fry, along with Ivan Herrera and Rick James. The first 4 guys of our lineup have been fantastic, along with apparently Jonah Bride, who is tied for the team lead in home runs and is second in RBIs. I definitely see why we're first in every category, as this is a very stable lineup, and then at 6, 7, and 8, Will Wagner, Austin Shenton, and Dominic Fletcher are all hitting over 290. Season 4 is really feeling like our year, and now in the MLB draft, I honestly don't really feel like making a queue, just because most of these players probably won't see the field for us. Due to the rules, we're required to take Howard Glass with our first selection, so I'm gonna get that out of the way. And just like the guy we drafted last year, there's no doubt in my mind that he is a bust. Thankfully though, we only had to wait 7 more selections for our next pick, and honestly, instead of reaching for a discovery guy or drafting a project player who's never gonna contribute to our run, I think this is the perfect time to draft a guaranteed high potential closer. I don't have any better ideas, so I am pulling the trigger and hoping for the best. That honestly might work out for us, as this position position player class is terrible, but in round 5, I'm finally drafting a center fielder, which I've been waiting to do for 3 seasons. I breezed straight through that, and it might have been one of the worst drafts I've ever done, but that is perfectly fine because it's more than likely we're not going to see any of those players in this rebuild as we are on fire at the trade deadline. That said, it would be very irresponsible to not at least try and improve the team even more, and I see that JJ Weatherholt plays for the Cincinnati Reds and is currently being blocked by Elly De La Cruz. It's definitely a risk, but we are thin at shortstop with Pablo Reyes starting to develop, and all this will cost us is a backup catcher who's never gonna play, so I'm pulling the trigger. That brings us into August, where we are 86-29 with a 30.5 game lead in the West, and even though I breezed through our draft just for fun, let's take a look. This is already off to a great start, as I can see that Howard Glass is injured, so he is gonna be an absolute bust, but at least we got some pretty good players outside of that. All things considered, both of these center fielders are extremely raw, but at least the catcher we drafted is 61 overall, and as always, taking a closer was definitely the right move. We also got a solid discovery pitcher in round 5 and some good trade bait in round 6, so all things considered, I think we made the most of what we had. Just like last year, the team is in a very good spot entering August, which does show me that last year's regular season was not a fluke, and that is very important considering what happened in the playoffs. That said, I think we can full send to the end of the year since there's nothing left for us to prove, and you've got to be kidding me, we finished with 115 wins, one short of the record. As far as awards go, Ivan Herrera in his first season with the team wins the batting title, and on top of that, Jorge Lopez repeats as reliever of the year. The resurgence of his career has been fantastic, as he actually had a better year than last year, securing 57 saves, and while his ERA did go up, his whip went down under 1. I wouldn't say our offense had a true superstar, but we were very well balanced, with many players putting together high-level seasons, including Alec Burleson, who was probably the best of the bunch once again. He was our only player to crack 100 RBIs, but we also had 6 guys with an OPS above 800, and several more who cracked 700, so this team was just extremely well-rounded. Additionally, JJ Weatherholt stepped in as our new starting shortstop, and he showed a ton of improvement, which is a great sign. The order of our rotation changed a bit throughout the year, but the results were ultimately the same, as we were completely dominant, and I think I've already seen enough. It is time for the playoffs. The embarrassment against Seattle is still fresh on the tongue, as we're taking on New York, and fortunately, it feels like they're a bit more on our level than Seattle was, as Aaron Judge is regressing, and the rest of the team is nothing special. Before we start, it's also worth mentioning we will not get a chance to rematch against Seattle because they lost in the wild card round to Baltimore. We have built a very fun 115 win team, but we're about to find out if we can win a playoff series, as game 1 against New York is tied in the 7th, but Alec Burleson sneaks this through for an RBI. We have taken our first lead of the day, and now Jorge Lopez is in the game to close it out, but he's making me nervous with 2 walks, but there's a double play and the final out. Not only do we take game 1, but that is the first playoff win in Sharks history, and now Jordy Wagner is starting game 2 as he had a great season, and there's a run. We have taken an early 2-run lead, but Herrera cannot add another, so we're really counting on Wagner, who gives up his first run. Not a promising look, but we immediately extend our lead with a double, so it seems we're in a pretty good spot, and never mind. All it took was 1 home run for the tie, but now the bases are loaded for all-star outfielder Rick James, who's gonna deliver with 2 runs of his own. So far, James has been one of the most exciting players in MLB, as there's 3 more runs, so the Sharks win the second game thanks to 6 runs in 2 innings. That means that New York is facing elimination, so I'm simming the next game, and there's a sweep. The Hawaii Sharks are moving on to the ALCS, where they're taking on the Tigers, and honestly, they're nothing special either, so we're going straight into this, getting off to the worst possible start. The Tigers have scored 2 runs in the first inning, and we cannot do anything off Jackson Jobe, so we might be in trouble as we finally score but are still trailing. However, there are 2 aboard in the 9th inning as Jolks hits into a double play, so unfortunately we lose game 1. That is a tough way to lose, but thankfully in game number 2, we take a late lead, so we immediately bounce back and find a way to get even. In game 3, this is still anyone's race as we go deep, and with Jordy Wagner on the mound, we are in for an absolute sweaty as he's holding it down, and David Fry delivers a 3-run nuke. That is another decisive victory for the Sharks, and it seems they have all the momentum, so I'm simulating 1 game which they win. That means we are 1 victory away from a World Series, but we're off to a bad start as Scrawny gives up the first run of the game, but we strike right back with a bunch of singles and then a grand slam. Ivan Herrera. That is a statement in the second inning as we are leading by 4 runs and there's no way they're coming back. It seems the Tigers have run out of life as we score again, and after starting the series down 1 game, the Sharks win their 4th in a row to advance to the World Series. They are American League champs in their 4th year of existence, which is very exciting, but now it's time for the big game where we're taking on the Pittsburgh Pirates. Okay, definitely not the team I expected, but they still have their big 3 of Skeens, Cruz, and Jones, but they've also signed Ryan Helsley and Jazz Chisholm Jr., so ultimately not a bad team. If we can beat Paul Skeens, we skyrocket our chance to win, and so far we're off to a good start with a 1-0 lead, as we have Adames on the mound, and there's a solo home run for Weatherholt, followed by 2 RBIs from Fry. Throughout the playoffs, this Sharks offense has stood on business, and they could not have started their World Series run any better. We have taken down their biggest threat, Paul Skeens, but Jared Jones is also no slouch, as we're tied at 1 apiece in the 4th, but the Sharks take the lead. Our ability to actually score runs has made all the difference in this one, as they've gotten on base plenty of times, but just haven't scored, as Jorge Lopez is in with a 1-run game, and the best closer in baseball is in a bit of trouble. He is 1 out away from the win, but the tying run is on 3rd base, as thankfully there is a swing and a miss to give Hawaii their 2nd World Series win. I can't even begin to explain how big of a deal it is to beat Paul Skeens and Jared Jones as we sim the 3rd game and win. So the Sharks are 1 win away from a World Series sweep, but they're going up against Paul Skeens once more, and the Pirates are not having it. We are down 2-0, but Ivan Herrera leaves 2 on base, so we might not get the sweep, but not so fast. The bases are loaded. Down 2, Alec Burleson can be the hero, but he grounds to 2nd base, so it's very likely this will be our first loss of the World Series, but Rick James goes yard, and that cuts it to a 1-run game, and for a second, I thought Bryde gave us the lead. The 9th inning is our last chance as Helsley's trying to close us out, but Weatherholt continues his strong October and now advances to 2nd base. This could be our chance to get back in it, and that was a meatball, but unfortunately, we waste the opportunity, and this is the final out of the game. No sweep against Pittsburgh, but we still have a 3-1 lead, which I'm feeling pretty good about, especially because we're back to the top of our rotation with Christian Adames. Here's his chance to be the hero as we load the bases and score 3 runs, so that is a great start, but Pittsburgh scores 2 of their own. That is a fast start, and then Jazz goes deep, and I don't know what's going on with this game, but it's certainly one for the ages. I also don't know how I missed this, but Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is their shortstop, and of course, he was on our team in Season 1, but wanted way too much money for us to bring him back, so he signed with Pittsburgh. Either way, he would have ended up in the World Series, but now the question is, who's gonna win it? A late rally gives the Pirates their 2nd win in a row, so now I'm a bit nervous as we need Jordy Wagner to close this out, and that certainly helps. It's been a quiet postseason for Alec Burleson, but I'm glad he's finally showing up as Wagner is cooking, so we could be on our way to a World Series win as Burleson goes deep once again, but this World Series is not over yet. Pittsburgh's offense has been heating up while ours just can't do anything, as Alec Burleson's the only reason we're in the lead. However, here is Rick James with the bases loaded, and for some reason we just can't make good contact, and that has become a very frustrating theme in the playoffs, as here's Karen Shack giving up the tying run. I don't know what's going on with us, but we're broken, and we have to figure it out because I do not want to go to Game 7. Thankfully, we get our lead right back. Now with the World Series on the line, it is time for Jorge Lopez to cook, and with 1 on, he is a strike away from the win. We are throwing the sinker down and away. Jorge swing and miss. We have won the World Series. That probably took years off my life, but the Hawaii Sharks, after just 4 seasons of existing, have rebuilt their team through cheap free agents and the draft to eclipse the pinnacle of baseball. This has been such a fun rebuild, so remember to drop a like, and if you're sad this one's over, you can click right here to see more of my content.